Ever wondered how the United States got entangled in a long and brutal war in a small Southeast Asian country called Vietnam? It's a complex story, so let's break it down. It all started long before American combat troops arrived. After World War II, Vietnam, a former French colony, fought for its independence. The 1954 Geneva Accords split the country into two, the Communist North and the anti-Communist South. The plan was to reunify the country with an election in 1956, but that never happened. The United States, deep in the Cold War with the Soviet Union, feared the spread of communism. This was known as the domino theory. If one country fell to communism, its neighbors would follow. So, America started supporting South Vietnam, sending military advisors and financial aid to prop up its government against the Viet Cong, a communist-led guerrilla force in the South backed by North Vietnam. Things escalated in August 1964 with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The U.S. claimed its naval destroyers were attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats in the Gulf of Tonkin. This event led the U.S. Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, giving President Lyndon B. Johnson broad powers to use military force in Vietnam without a formal declaration of war. By 1965, the first American combat troops landed in Da Nang, and the U.S. was officially at war. What started as a limited engagement quickly spiraled. The number of American troops swelled, reaching over 500,000 by 1968. But this wasn't a conventional war. The U.S. military, with its superior technology and firepower, faced a determined and elusive enemy. The Viet Cong used guerrilla tactics, blending in with the civilian population, using a vast network of underground tunnels and setting up booby traps. The dense jungle terrain was their ally, making it incredibly difficult for American forces to find and fight them. The American strategy was largely one of search and destroy and attrition. The goal was to kill enemy soldiers faster than they could be replaced. But the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army were resilient. Receiving support from China and the Soviet Union, the U.S. also launched a massive bombing campaign called Operation Rolling Thunder against North Vietnam, but it failed to break their will to fight. One of the turning points was the Tet Offensive in January 1968. During the Vietnamese New Year, or Tet, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces launched a massive, coordinated surprise attack on cities and towns across South Vietnam. Militarily, it was a defeat for the Communists, who suffered huge losses. However, it was a massive psychological blow to the United States. Back home, Americans had been told they were winning the war. But the images on their television screens told a different story. Fierce fighting in the streets of Saigon. Even at the U.S. Embassy, public support for the war, which had already been waning, plummeted. A huge anti-war movement grew across the country, with massive protests and civil unrest. People began to question the morality and purpose of the war. The human cost for America was immense. Over 58,000 American service members lost their lives in Vietnam. More than 300,000 were wounded. Many veterans who returned home faced not a hero's welcome, but public hostility and indifference. They also carried deep physical and psychological scars. The term post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, became widely recognized in large part due to the experiences of Vietnam veterans. The war dragged on for years after the Tet Offensive. With the U.S. slowly withdrawing troops under a policy called Vietnamization, transferring the fighting responsibility to the South Vietnamese Army, a peace agreement was finally signed in Paris in 1973, and the last American combat troops left. But the peace didn't last. In 1975, North Vietnam launched a final offensive, and South Vietnam fell. The war was over, and Vietnam was reunified under communist rule. The Vietnam War was a profound and painful chapter in American history. It cost countless lives, divided the nation, and changed the way Americans viewed their government and their country's role in the world. It serves as a powerful reminder of the complex realities and the immense human cost of war.